very excited to have Kyle Gerstel from the Teen Tix Press Corps as our moderator for this panel. And Kyle, I'm going to kick it over to you, and you can introduce yourself and bring up our panelists.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. And thank you to all the panelists and audience members for being here. I'm Kyle Gerstel. I'm a member of the Teen Tix newsroom. And now if each of our panelists can provide a 1-minute summary of your name, pronouns, who you are, and what you do, that would be great. Lily, we can start with you.
Sweet. Thanks, Kyle. I'm Lily Raby. I use she, her pronouns. Let's see. Creatively, I'm more of a writer, director, producer, facilitator type of person. I also do consulting work with Scan Ducey Krebs. We're a consulting firm for culture and community, and we can help artists and arts orgs with all sorts of crazy, fun things. Currently, I just moved down to Olympia, so I'm the new artistic director at Olympia Family Theater. But during the pandemic, and why I'm on this panel, is that I helped to co-found a project called the Northwest Art Streaming Hub. And for a little over a year, we provided free of cost live streaming services to artists and arts organizations with a focus on supporting BIPOC community members and low-income community members to help anyone with a creative project translate their work into a virtual realm and get all the support that they needed without any cost coming to them. And then I partnered with the Vera Project and Ricky, who's about to introduce himself. And we had a really awesome training program around live streaming, content creation, and digital media in the spring. So that's why I'm on this particular panel, and I'm excited to be here.
Hey everybody, I'm Claire. I use she, her pronouns. I am a director. I'm specifically the director of development over at cut.com. We are a YouTube channel and media company. Our YouTube channel has like a little over 10 million subscribers. It's been around in Seattle for 5 or 6 years now, and I head up the creative department. So I basically am managing all of our in-house directors and also do a lot of the directing myself on the channel. We do a lot of social experiments and kind of like unscripted TV shows and digital content for places like YouTube and Facebook and Snapchat and TikTok and all of that stuff. So really excited here to talk about some digital content and making videos for the internet.
Great. Thank you so much. Cassandra, you can go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra, and my pronouns are she, her. I have been a content creator, full-time content creator for the last 8 years. Most of my content has been live streaming content on Twitch, which is a live streaming interactive platform. And over my journey the last 8 years, it's been a lot of live streaming content. I've done also hosting, voice acting, commentating, you name it, I've probably done it in the space. And I continue to do that. And then I also joined Twitch as an employee as well last year in the social impact department. So during the days, I actually do things to empower our creators and work with charities.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Ricky, how about you go?
Sure. Hey, I'm Ricky, he, him pronouns. Thanks so much for having me today. Very cool handling of technical difficulties, Kyle. I am the executive director of the Vera Project. We're an all-ages music and art space located in Seattle Center, and we've got a whole slate of programs related to digital production and to content creation. We kind of pivoted all of our operations at the beginning of the pandemic to really focus on stuff that only a few of us on staff had expertise on, and I co-created with all of our staff members and some incredible folks in our youth-driven membership, our Vera TV platform, where we were able to pay artists, raise a ton of money for other organizations and other community-based initiatives, as well as create some pretty cool things that we got to broadcast out to thousands of folks throughout the last couple of years. But yeah, thanks again for having me. Glad to be here.
My name's Jason Sandy. I am the co-founder of Short of the Week, which is a website dedicated to lifting up emerging talent in the short film space. So we are kind of the preferred premier partners for filmmakers who want to bring their short work online. We've been doing it for about 13 years, and we have a few different outlets that we work, including a YouTube channel, social media, and we provide sort of guidance and expertise for people who are looking to launch their work online and then connect those filmmakers to both audience and professional opportunities. So we have a large sort of industry network that looks to us for sourcing new talent. And we're also in the process of developing our own projects in conjunction with Oscar-winning producer Michael Sugar and Cary Fukunaga and David Gordon Green. And then the next sort of step for Short of the Week is, rather than being sort of a curated blog, we're actively building out a new platform that will be more of a kind of niche social network for short filmmakers to manage the promotion and launch of their shorts and connect with other like-minded individuals.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jason. I think that was everybody. So now if everyone could go around and share what you believe makes someone an artist, we can go in the same order as we did last time. Or if anyone has something to share immediately, then you can just raise your hand.
What makes someone an artist? Well, first, I think that everyone is inherently an artist and capable of being an artist. I think, especially when we're kids, we all have outlets for our creativity and imagination. And I think, sadly, as we get older, we become less creative and less imaginative. So maybe there's something to saying, oh, artists are simply people who have managed to maintain their sense of creativity and imagination as they grow and as they age. But I think everyone has the ability, and then it's what you do with it. And I don't think you have to be necessarily paid or trained or have any kind of degree or qualification to be an artist. You just have to make things. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Lily. Again, couldn't hear you, but I imagine your answer was fantastic. Okay, Cassandra, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I think when it comes to being a artist, I think that it's just someone who can be somewhat creative, or you are looking to solve a problem, or you're creating something. And I think that goes in a lot of aspects of life. I think you don't have to be in the creative space to be considered I guess an artist in a sense. I think you can, be working probably some desk job somewhere. And I think, being an artist and leaning into that creativity, maybe you're creating a program that's helping others, or maybe you're, I don't know, building a program. I think these are all different types of outlets for someone to be creative and to be an artist.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Here, who was next? Claire, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, I don't know if I have so much to add, but I think if you make stuff, you can be an artist. If you're making something and you're putting it out there, it's an act of vulnerability. But I think if you're making stuff, I think that counts.
Awesome. Here, let me check. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo everybody else. The easy answer is it's one of self-definition. There's no gatekeeping to artistry. So you say that you're an artist, and suddenly you are an artist. My sort of highfalutin philosophy is that as human beings, we can never fully know or connect any other human being. It's a very solipsistic sort of trap that we're all in within our own perspective. And art, the true meaning of art is just to communicate something true, to be able to fully render a personal experience and have that be sympathetically received by another person. So I think that's kind of, for me, the foundation of all art. And that's the thing that I look for the most. Are you communicating something true? And even if you're doing like a horror film, like something schlocky, it's like, are you communicating a genuine feeling of terror? Is that something that you can experience, or that you've experienced before, that you can describe and create, a verisimilitude towards, that someone else can experience? And I think that's kind of the foundation of it for me.
Got it. Ricky, anything to add?
I'm going to double, triple, quadruple down on what everybody else is saying. I think it's whatever you need it to be. As long as you're creating something and you're able to create it for yourself, and it's not driven entirely by a profit system or trying to echo everything else that's around you, and it's got some degree of authenticity, and you're making it because it helps you express something, do something, be a part of something. I think that's all you really need.
Great, thank you all so much. So during the pandemic, the digital world has become so much more prevalent. So how have you all kept up with that and shifted your work based on the pandemic? Anyone have something immediately comes to mind, or?
Sure. I'll go. When it comes to, I guess, the digital world and shifting my work, it's I think it's kind of funny because my work has been indoors. So as a creator and a live broadcaster, a lot of my work has always typically been in front of a computer screen, in front of a webcam. So a lot did not change very much there. But I will say that the time that I gained from not going to live person events, things of that sort, it allowed me to sort of kind of hone in on like this creativity and some ideas that I don't think I would have had much time to really kind of think about or to sort of bring to light. Um, so I guess when it comes to shifting my work based on the pandemic, it's more of the pandemic didn't necessarily um, shift my work, but it shifted my mindset.
That's great. Does anyone else have something, maybe more reflection or a different aspect that was brought up to them?
Yeah, I can say something. I think the videos that we do at Cut and a lot of the stuff that we make involves being obviously in person with other people and getting them to tell you vulnerable things and working with real people in a real space. And when the pandemic hit, one of the shifts that we made was kind of taking advantage of our audience abroad and kind of globally the amount of Cut fans and people who know our channel. So one of the things that we did early on was when we weren't able to shoot things, after we had kind of gone through the archives and edited a lot of things that were never on the channel just to kind of see what kind of content we could push out, we reached out to our audience and said, what does it look like in your country to go grocery shopping right now? So we want you to take your phone and take us to your grocery store. And we got submissions from 30 different countries of people saying, here I am going to the grocery store. And it was just, this really mundane kind of vlogging content. But when we strung it all together, and these are, in the first few weeks of March, it was really powerful. And I think, even for myself, looking at some of this footage, it made me feel a little bit better. And it was kind of a nice way to reconnect with an audience and reconnect with people around the world who are similarly stuck at home. And, in aggregate, when you're putting together these videos of people doing mundane things, but how it looks, or how the streets look in Paris during the first days of the pandemic, or how they look in Senegal, or all of these different places, it was really special. And I think we really realized that you can lean on people that in different places who are also stuck inside. So I think we shifted to a lot of content like that in the early days and did a lot of things with webcam and tried to do a lot of our shows in a similar fashion, but just using Zoom, which is really difficult. And, the production value just is hard to replicate from something that has great lighting in a studio. But I don't know, it made me feel a lot better being able to realize that there's a lot of other people who can shoot things from literally the inside of their house.
Amazing. Jason, Lily, Ricky, anything to add?
Yeah, I can add on because I think, that thing of not just connecting with a global audience, but it allows you to collaborate with so many people that don't necessarily have to be in your immediate vicinity. So, for example, I produce an interdisciplinary arts festival on the Big Island of Hawaii every year. And typically we're working with a lot of folks there. So we really only have connected on the phone here or there in the time that we're there. And this last year, we were able to have bi-weekly meetings, and the depth of relationship building completely shifted. There were people that I worked with for Nash who I've actually never met physically in the same room, but we were collaborating in a virtual space and building some really great relationships. So there's just so much possibility to make art with people that don't have to live in your immediate vicinity. And that's something that I really hope never goes away. I also think that this last year, I felt so much permission to make mistakes because no one, especially from like a theater or performance, in-person performance perspective, no one was an expert at this. So everyone was trying new things, and it meant that you didn't have to be perfect. which in some ways is so liberating as an artist, and as someone who produces things where, we're used to a certain level of polish, and that kind of went out the window, right? Because now we're producing in Zoom, we're just trying something, but there was something really human and lovely about that. And seeing people do the best that they could under the circumstance made you root for people and be vulnerable and be brave. And I think the other thing about producing in virtual settings that really came, beyond just connecting with people who are in different places there, which is about accessibility. There's also some incredible accessibility for people with disabilities, for the deaf and hard of hearing community, being able to add captions, being able to embed an ASL interpreter. This is a format that works so much better for different people. If we have venues that don't have wheelchair accessibility, for people to be able to see really great content that's being made and they can watch it in their home, that's really powerful. So, a really big hope that I have is when we're looking to the future, and again, I'm coming more from a live performance perspective, but I really hope that we don't just go back to the way it was. And I hope that we take what we've learned and embed it into how we produce in the future, especially when it comes to accessibility. So.
Great, thank you so much. Jason, Ricky, anything to add? I imagine that there's a lot to talk about for Vera.
Sure. I'd love to hone in on some of the things that Lily brought up, since we got to work together so much on this exact thing throughout the last couple of years. But I can't overemphasize how truly terrible we were at all of this. Vera Project is a music venue and a community center, first and foremost. We had never really done any live streamed or video production connected programming. We just realized young people that call their space home needed something. They were, devoid of that connection, of that culture, of that opportunity to show off what they needed to show off and to express what they needed to for such a long time, that it was, having a pretty significant detrimental impact just on youth-driven communities in Seattle. Young people not having that inherent connection that everybody needs, but I think is particularly prevalent for young folks and young artists. So we just started asking bands to film segments through their laptop speakers at home. Eventually, we figured out how to send them microphones and better equipment and webcams and all that kind of stuff. From the beginning, it was literally just people recording themselves on their phone, playing some 2-minute track. And Vera comes from kind of a background of underground spaces and the underground music and DIY scene, where young people just play with an acoustic guitar or the loudest amp possible in a random warehouse or basement. And that's kind of what we tried to replicate, of just like, what if it didn't matter that we don't know how to do this, or that any of the bands doing this don't have the right equipment? What if we could just harken right back to the house show days and just have people literally do the same thing, just record whatever they want at any time in their house. We air it in the best way that we can. Always a technical difficulty, but there also is at most of the shows that young folks put on with us too. So it felt more authentic that way. And it also gave us incredible opportunities to get pretty good at it. First of all, us on staff and all of the youth community that made it possible, learning how to do this was incredible. And I think the most important shift for us was being able to collaborate, like what Lily was getting at, with not just, hundreds and hundreds of artists from all over the country and world for the first time. Otherwise, they would have had to, tour through town and get to us that way. But we just got to connect right with them and give them a platform and pay them to do what they do best. But also all the nonprofit and other community-based orgs and more political groups and stuff that we got to kind of celebrate and connect to the music aspect of what we were doing. I think this is going to be echoed through a lot of people, but we made all these shifts and built these platforms and spent 2 years just trying to cultivate something good for the community that we work with. And now we just don't want to stop doing that. So we're scrambling to figure out how to do this forever. It was such a powerful platform for us, a new way to reach people and give people more access and opportunity, that we're just continuing all of it. We have twice as many programs as we did before the pandemic, because we just found the need, and now we're just scrambling to keep it going.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. Jason, any final thoughts about the pandemic and how that's shifted your work?
Yeah, I mean, I can keep it pretty short so we can move on to a new subject. But my company was explicitly founded as a remote work company. So I have employees in 6 different countries, and this kind of distributed workflow is something that we've been doing forever. I subscribe to the hypothesis that a lot of people have put forward, though, that what this really did in terms of our digital lives is just accelerate changes that were already underway and move the timeline up, 5, 10 years. And so none of this is going to go away. I don't think it's going to go back to normal. I think virtual and remote work is here to stay. And I think it's going to have profound impact for live gatherings and meetings of institutions like Nifty. In some sense, we've been evangelists for the idea of putting your work out there and using online and using the friction-free spread of the internet to promote your work. And that has sometimes butted heads with traditional festivals. And just to kind of like add an anecdote that backs up this idea that the pandemic just moved things forward. In April of 2020, I think our submissions went up about 300% and continued to stay at about 300% for about 5 or 6 months. And so a whole bunch of people who, had been traditionally going to film festivals and thought about online as this thing that you do at the end of a traditional festival run, suddenly the disruption caused them to rethink that, whether or not they went online premiere or whether or not they decided that you could do both at the same time. You can do film festivals and online at the same time. A lot of people kind of revisited their sort of central assumptions, and I don't think it's changing, and I don't think it's going to go back, and I don't think it should, because I think, as some of the other panelists said, that there's a lot of benefit in accessibility, in inclusivity, to not have people have to go to super expensive vacation destinations to participate in a film ecosystem when they don't necessarily have the money to do so. There's a lot of good reasons for us to continue to build on the kind of habits that we've built over the last 2 years.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting. Okay, so my next few questions are kind of centered around your advice for artists specifically right now. So how do all of you recommend that artists continue to create content during these troubling times, both logistically but also due to the emotional impact that it's had on many? Does anyone want to start?
I'll start again, I guess. I just want to say, first off, that last question, you all provided some really great insights. I really enjoyed listening to that. But when it comes to, creating things in this current time, and possibly like working with a budget, things like that, I think it's really important to recognize that you don't need the best of the best equipment to tell your story. You don't need the best of the best of the best equipment to produce or record or really put content out there. So, for instance, when it comes to like cameras and things like that, most people I feel own iPhones, and they are surprisingly fantastic for filming. Um, especially when you utilize like the 4K option, you can get some beautiful, beautiful film work out of an iPhone. And if you had seen, I think the Apple's recent thing for the iPhone 13, they were actually showing people shooting actual like films and things like that with an iPhone. So, if you have an iPhone, you can easily use that. You don't need to go out and spend thousands of dollars on like a video, recorder, things like that. When, you have one of the greatest tools in your hand. When it comes to lighting, you don't need crazy expensive lighting. You can easily find lighting on Amazon for like less than $50. There are so many different options out there when it comes to trying to get the quality that you want. And maybe it's not like the highest quality that you want, but you can definitely still get a pretty great quality with very minimal items, minimal effort. And when it comes to creating that content for yourself. I know that the pandemic has been emotionally and mentally draining, exhausting. And I think one of the things that helped me during the pandemic was recognizing the things that really brought me joy, recognizing the things that that made life fun for me, and honing in on that. And sometimes that really hones in on your own personal skills as well. So I would say, concentrating on the things that you're good at or the things that you're passionate about can really help, sort of ignite you out of, a possible like rut that you may be in. And you'd be surprised at what you can create.
Got it. Thank you so much for those insights. Does anyone else have something to share?
Yeah, I can say some things. I was really concerned about what the pandemic was going to do to creativity. Obviously, film is a very collaborative medium. It has a lot of capital costs, a lot of equipment, a lot of big crews. And one of the things that we did at Short of the Week, just to kind of spur creativity, is we worked with notable Nifty alum Lance Oppenheim, and we created a program called Shelter Shorts. And it was basically just like a very informal or not contest, even just like an invitation to create, saying like, hey, we all have these limitations right now, so let's have fun with them and create a film at your place that you're sheltering at with only the people that you are sheltering with, your partner, your family. And I was really happy about it. We got maybe 600 completed films that were submitted to this program over the course of 3 or 4 months. We got several like name filmmakers like Crystal Moselle and whatnot to kind of participate. And I think it was, I don't think any of these films, anybody who made a film is going to say, this is the first thing that goes on my reel. This isn't going to be the thing that is going to like be the high point of my film career. But I think it was an excuse for people to make and take a little bit of control and have a little bit of fun in what was kind of, a dark and depressing time. And I also think that for a lot of people, it was probably a good exercise in recognizing what is ultimately important. It's conventional wisdom, but it's conventional wisdom for a reason. People always say that like the most important thing of the film is a script. Yeah, I think in short film specifically, it's maybe not even a script, it's like a concept. And there's a lot of people that get themselves into a lot of trouble worrying about a lot of the things that Cassandra was talking about, like what kind of equipment I'm using, what kind of locations, what kind of permit, all this sort of like ancillary stuff, when really you need to be homing in on how good is my concept. Am I communicating something that's clever, that's true, that's funny, that's real, that's dramatic, that's relatable? And really, it was an excuse for people to kind of double down on the fundamental of why they're making something. And why do you want to make things, period? Why do you want to make films, period? And yeah, I think it was a good opportunity. And as far as the emotional side of things, I think the biggest lesson I learned, especially because everybody was going through it at the same time, is there's a lot of empathy out there. And I think there was a really strong movement that, if something fell down, if you weren't able to deliver XYZ on time, like there was just a lot of like empathy from all the people and all the industry members and filmmakers that I was working with, just being like, cool, our kind of like rush, grind culture, not really healthy, wasn't ever really healthy. It's not that important. We have faith that, just do your best. And I think that's something hopefully that I hope carries on kind of into the future, is just people kind of cutting other people a little bit of slack.
Yeah, definitely. In the news with the Alec Baldwin controversy, I was just listening to NPR the other day, and they were just talking about the same thing about scheduling. We do have a few more questions left, but if any of the remaining panelists have something that they really want to say about that subject, then we can stay on it for another couple minutes. Or are you all ready to move on? Okay, great. So my next question is, how do you all recommend that young artists try to cultivate an audience for their work after having already found a way to create during this difficult time? And if any of the panelists who didn't speak last time want to speak on this subject, you can go first.
Yeah, I can hop in there. I think I was telling this to somebody during the like breakout sessions, but I think establishing a niche of the thing that you really like to do and the thing that you're good at is great when you're starting out, because you're going to have so many diffuse interests and want to do so many things. But I think focusing on kind of like one genre or one thing that you really are passionate about, that you're good at, and doing it over and over and over and over again is a really great way to build an audience. Not that you have to stick in that lane or do that one thing forever, but I think it's really good practice to kind of like understand a voice, whether that's particularly in a genre that you're going for, or if that's just you as a filmmaker and a creator. I think kind of doing your thing and doing it really well is a great way to get people to be like, oh yeah, that's the person who does this kind of video, or they're always doing this sort of thing. And then as you develop your voice, you can kind of spread out and start trying other things. But just doing it over and over again, and then also finishing things is one thing I always like recommend to filmmakers. Is like, you're going to make so much stuff that you think is garbage and you don't want to finish it, and you don't want to just like be done with the project, and it'll just be sitting on a hard drive forever haunting you. So I always recommend, like, even if you think it's trash, finish it and put it out there, or don't put it out there, just finish it. And then, you know, eventually you'll finish something and you'll be like, this is actually kind of good. I actually want to keep doing this. Because if you don't actually just like tie the bow and finish the project, yeah, it'll haunt you. And I think it's really important to just do it over and over again. And then, yeah, one day you'll be like, this is good that I made.
Yeah, and if I can jump in.
Thank you so much for those insights. Lily, Ricky, do either of you have anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Make stuff, finish it, post it, put yourself out there. But I think, you know, and to that, it needs to be authentic. So it can't just be that I decide I'm going to start making a genre of niche video that, like, I don't know, has nothing to do with me. Ukrainian cooking would not be authentic to me as a person. So picking something that really is personal, and then being really, really personal with the people who follow you as well. So if you have people that comment, if you have people that engage, spending the time to engage back with them. People, at the heart of most people, they want relationships. So building a relationship with your followers and with your audience and your fans is going to be super important. When I see content creators that I really like, they're not always the most polished. They're not always the funniest even, but they're really, really authentic. Truth always comes through no matter what you're making in art. So the more truthful and real you can be, and then the more you can invest in truthful, real relationships, I think you get really good engagement out of that.
I would say that being authentic, being personable, that's all incredibly important. When it comes to building your audience, I would say, like, don't get discouraged in the beginning, because at the end of the day, everyone started off with 0 followers, 0 likes. Their biggest fans were grandma and grandpa. And you know, everyone has to start at the floor. And I know that sometimes you might put something out there and maybe only a few people see it, but as long as you're, you know, staying consistent and really pouring your heart into the things that you create, and, you know, being connected with your community, eventually things will definitely get better. Eventually you do start to build that audience. And I think it's very important to make sure you're utilizing all social media platforms, because at the end of the day, the social media platforms are going to be like your one of your main sources in really getting your stuff out there. So if your stuff is specifically maybe made for Instagram, make sure you're using Instagram a lot. Make sure you're looking up best practices on how to use that, and how often you should be posting, when you should be posting. Utilize social media posting websites for you so you can stay consistent, creating schedules. When it comes to Twitter, make sure that you are running out there, and let's say you're part of, like, Twitter has little pockets of communities. So if you're like within gaming, you want to start connecting with a lot of, creators that are in gaming, and eventually you kind of get into gaming Twitter, and that's how you sort of like network in that general area. And then also please utilize TikTok. TikTok is one of the best areas for discovery right now. And yeah, you might upload something and it gets like 30 views or something, but the TikTok algorithm just wants you to continuously post stuff. So just keep posting. Just keep posting. um but you want to make sure you're utilizing all of these things, because they really are what's going to help you, find and develop that audience.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. We're in our last few minutes, so I'd like to move on to my final question. Ricky, since I know you haven't spoken in a while, I'll start with you. But what content do you all think the world needs right now? Ricky, I realize I just put you on the spot, but if you don't have something.
No, I'm here
okay,
for it.
Great.
It's all good. I think any of it, whatever you want to put out there. I think it really ties into the last question too, of just like, it's so important, not necessarily to just find your audience, but to find your people. And if you're putting stuff out there, if you're being honest and open with what you want to be a part of and what you want to see and what changes you want to help inspire, then you'll find more people doing that. And don't just necessarily focus on the creation aspect either. Find other people making the things that you want to learn how to make. Connect with them. Find the different sub communities, whether they're in person or online. Use the different social media platforms however you want to, and try to adapt to, try not to adapt to what they're building, and try to build something yourself. I've always focused on, as someone that is haunted by all the unfinished products that I've never finished from the last couple of decades. Great advice, Claire. I try to focus on building community more so than anything else. We have a music venue and an online platform and all sorts of other stuff that we like to make, and we love to create, and we love to find opportunities to showcase young people creating. But really what everything that we do is about, what everything I've always done is about finding your people, finding your community, and using that community to improve yourself and improve the world around you. So the more content that's out there that can inspire that kind of work, that can be collaborative, that can be less focused on profit or focused on finding an audience necessarily, and more focused on just being authentic and honest, and meeting your people and figuring out what that means to you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do any of you have anything to add on to that? Jason, I feel like you haven't spoken for a bit. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, one of the founding principles of Short of the Week was, before the word got kind of co-opted into meaninglessness, was innovative storytelling. And we still try to stay true to that as sort of a guiding light to our programming. And I think it's really simple. It's like everybody you talk to, programmers, content development execs, producers, what's the number one thing that you get out of having these conversations with them is they want something fresh. They want something new, something original. These are people whose job it is to be wading through media all the time. And there's just a real hunger for, nobody has a clear definition, but they're looking for something fresh, something original. And, what does that mean? It means certain formal traits, like, you could be cutting up the traditional 3-act structure of a screenplay. You could be doing innovative visuals. You could be designing animations that don't quite look like anything else. But it can also simply be a process of iteration. It could be mashing things together. One of the things that we always say is that you can tell traditional stories that you've seen a number of times, but if you're telling them from a different perspective, you're telling them from underexposed perspective, suddenly that changes a lot of the fundamental assumptions of even very staid and traditional genres. So a lot of people, they're like, well, I'm going to get ahead in this industry by recreating something that I already know is successful. And I'm like, no, that's not actually the way to do it. Like, you're going to get ahead by creating something that, even if it's just a tiny twist, even if it's a tiny permutation, is something that's original that hasn't been seen before. And how do you get there as a creative? I think it's tough. I think you need to a certain extent, you need to put your dues in terms of getting the repetitions and building your expertise, because you can only fundamentally deconstruct something, or if you have like a grounding in what has come before. So you watch a lot, you take a lot of notes, you make a lot of short films that may not be very good, but you kind of get your chops in, you get the reps in, and then you start to figure out where the pockets or the holes of something interesting or original that you can say. And yeah, be true to yourself, because if you're not being authentic, that's hard. It's hard to connect with other people, and it's hard to connect with audiences because people have a pretty good bullshit meter for that sort of thing. So that would be my advice.
I want to see a monster movie. What the content that the world needs. That's more specific, but I want to see a cool contemporary like monster movie with practical effects. So if you're making that, talk to me, because I want to watch it.
I think the world needs a lot more honestly, it's just been such a grim like time. Can we get some more like feel good stuff? Can I get some more like puppies or some internet cats? I definitely enjoy that. Also, educational content has been doing really well. I definitely want to point that out. In a time where a lot of people aren't really, going out anymore. Everyone's been social distancing, all that stuff. It's I've seen, educational content going crazy, like, when it comes to cooking, since everyone had to resort to being inside all the time, not going out to restaurants, cooking content just went through the roof. People of all kinds are trying to learn how to cook. And, for instance, one of my favorites, her name is Alexis Nicole, and she is known as the Black Forager. And she's on TikTok, and she does these things where she teaches people how to like forage. And since most people to get outside, they were going into nature, um, you know, channels like that sort of blew up. So I think we could definitely use more educational content. If there's something that that maybe you don't see a lot of content on, you could definitely hone in on stuff like that.
Great, thank you so much. Lily, do you want to have the final word, or do you have nothing much else to add?
I guess the only thing I would say is that the heart of pretty much all of this is just storytelling. And if I'm going to tell a story, the central question I'm going to ask is, why am I telling this story right now? So I think I like stories that are relevant to the times. As a creator right now, I'm looking at a world that, as Cassandra said, is pretty grim. I think there's a lot of grief. So people are going to need to heal. They're going to need space and content that helps them to grieve and to process, that brings people together across, all sorts of different divides. So I'm looking for content and stories that help to lean into some of those questions, like, how do we survive? How have we survived? And where do we go from here? So maybe those aren't your questions, but generally, if you're going to make something, I'm always going to be like, well, why this story right now? And if you can answer that, it's probably a sign that it's a solid choice to be making it.